Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday and the patch notes for patch 12.17 have been posted, which means it's time for me to count down the top 5 changes on this week's patch. I'll be letting you guys know what you'll be looking forward to in the coming weeks and what the most insightful or impactful changes are going to be on this patch. Now this is the second to last patch before the Worlds patch, which means that while Riot aren't going to do a ton that might shake up the pro play meta to a significant margin, they are still trying to put in some things to spice up the game for us casuals in the meantime and potentially expand the pro play pool of viable champions. There are a lot of things that I'm really excited to talk about on this patch, so let's go ahead and start scrolling all the way down here to the number 5 change, which are going to be the Nami changes. Now, I'm really happy with these changes. The Nami Electrocute interaction was just super cheesy and was clearly not intended at all, and was like the only thing that turned Nami from a relatively mediocre support pick into a pro play staple overnight. I am glad that instead of trying to balance around the interaction, Riot are just removing it outright, saying, hey Nami, your E no longer counts for Electrocute. Obviously you can still proc it if you like E your target, or E your ally, and then W the target and auto attack them once, right? You can maybe still fit Electrocute in, but it's going to make it a lot less reliable, and that I think is going to do enough to remove Nami from the pro play pool. In general though, I'm very happy about this change overall. Moving on down here to the number 4 change, it is the stopwatch itemization nerfs. Now, stopwatch has been exceptionally powerful in both solo queue and in pro play, but it's also extremely powerful in pro play because of how much more value pro players can extract out of the item than the average player. I think stopwatch is the only item that every champion in the game will buy at some point in a pro play match, and that's obviously not healthy. Riot aren't removing it, but they are making it at least have a higher price point, so there's a little bit more of tension between buying an item with a very powerful active but no passive components at all versus buying an item that's going to actually stick in your build the whole way through. Riot are also throwing nerfs at both Guardian Angel and Zhonya's Hourglass, as these are items that build out of stopwatch. They're very, very potent right now because basically everyone builds them, because if you're going to have a stopwatch, you may as well build it into something afterwards, and so these items are also getting hit with on their price point, but they are getting increased stats to compensate for their overall higher cost, which I think is probably fair. Seeker's Armguard also has a very small change here that should make it a little bit more palatable towards mid lane mages that want a little bit more protection against the mid lane assassins that they may be dealing with. Overall, I'm a big fan of these changes. I don't know that it's going to fundamentally remove stopwatch from the pro play pool, but I'm excited to see a nerf directed in its direction, and hopefully it is enough to at least make pros think a little bit harder about whether or not they actually want to buy this. Moving on to the number 3 change here, we're going to be talking about the Miss Fortune changes here. I'm really happy about these. The lethality Miss Fortune build has been her preferred build for at least a year now, and I'm not a fan of it because it doesn't rely on anything other than spamming your E in lane, which is super uninteractive and just not fun to deal with, though it's probably very fun for the Miss Fortune players abusing it. Instead, Riot are all but removing it from the game and giving Miss Fortune a lot of compensatory buffs that are going to help her critical strike builds as opposed to her lethality builds. The E changes here I think I'm a big fan of. The force extra second cooldown on Make It Rain at maximum rank is a huge deal. You get significantly fewer casts of this in lane. It's going to make it a lot easier for champions to weather the storm that Miss Fortune is bringing in the form of bullets. And the damage overall has been reduced. The slow has also been normalized to 50%. This is going to be a lot better for players that are leaving it as 1-point wonder, a lot worse for players like lethality Miss Fortune players that are going to be first maxing it. If you're an AP Miss Fortune player though, don't worry, the AP ratio has been buffed, and also the slow now scales with AP as well, so if you're building a lot of AP, you're still going to be totally fine with E. The biggest change here is the Q cast time change for Miss Fortune. Now it matches the basic attack timer, which is really, really nice. It should make it feel a lot less clunky, especially with doing things like a max range auto attack into Q, something like that. It should actually feel responsive as opposed to right now where oftentimes it'll start and then fizzle because the enemy walks out of range. Really happy with these changes, and I like the direction that Riot are taking here. Moving on up to the Hecarim changes at number 2. I'm a really big fan of these Hecarim changes. I think they're really, really spicy as well, as Riot are sort of taking Hecarim's one-shot build and saying that's not healthy, and then looking at his tank build and saying we don't really like the gameplay behind that, and sort of slapping the two together to make this Bruiser Hecarim build path and Bruiser Hecarim playstyle that I'm a really big fan of. Key to these changes are W now granting resists on activation and during the duration, which is really nice, and Rampage having a bunch of changes that essentially amount to you have 3 stacks of your Q now, and the damage per stack is literally doubled, which means that you are going to be hitting like a truck with a maximum stacked Q in the middle of a team fight. You also only lose 1 stack per second at the end of the duration, as opposed to all of them falling off, which means that if you're a little inefficient about getting your next jungle paths, you're not actually going to lose that much in terms of your clear time. Like, these changes are massive and should do a lot to help Hecarim actually sort of thrive in the middle of a fight, popping W, pressing Q as much as possible, stacking up, and just dealing a ton of damage while also being really, really tanky. This did come with some compensation changes. E and R both took a couple of nerfs. The biggest thing here is that their utility, the knockback on E and the fear on R, those both are decreased, so they're going to hurt a little bit less than they were before, but generally I think these are fine compensatory buffs to give Hecarim more of a life in the middle of a team fight as opposed to right now, where he's either one-shotting you, he's building full tank, or he's not doing anything. Big fan of these changes. But the number one changes here is the sort of mini rework here to Maokai. I think these are really spicy and do give Maokai a potential lease on life in pro play. The biggest changes I think here are to the Q. Now, the percent health damage has been removed from Maokai's E and added back to his Q, which makes it sort of his primary brawling ability and trading ability in the top lane, which I think is a really, really cool change that Riot were able to make. There's also now bonus damage to monsters on it as well, which is quite nice. And on top, speaking about monsters, now Sap Magic will refund some of its cooldown on large monster attacks as well as regular champion attacks, which is going to allow Maokai to really reset this quickly. This means that not only will he be healthier clearing the jungle, he'll also do it a lot faster, which should make him feel more at home in both the jungle and in the top lane. Sapling Toss did get a few nerfs here, which is a little bit disappointing to the ability, but the slow mount was at least buffed, so it's better as a one-point wonder as just sort of your utility, get a slow on a guy type ability. But I think one of the biggest changes here is to Nature's Grasp, which I'm really, really excited for. The initial speed, the maximum speed, and the acceleration are all increased. This ability is going to be turbo fast now and allow Maokai to actually maybe sort of use it in a way that's not at point-blank range. And it also now grants Maokai decaying movement speed bonus if he hits an enemy champion with a Vine, which allows Maokai to then actually use this at maximum range, follow up behind it. If it hits a champion, he then gets the movement speed to close the gap and follow up with a Twisted Advance. Really, really usable changes for Maokai overall. I think they should help restore him to the top lane, sort of brawling king of top lane status that he used to have before. It probably won't be that bad, but I'm really a big fan of these changes, and I'm really happy with the direction that Riot have taken. And that's going to be it for me today, guys. Those are the top 5 changes of patch 12.17. Let me know which changes you're most excited for down in the comment section below. I love basically this whole patch, but you guys, if you have something in particular that you like, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. I know I missed last patch. I don't know why I missed that. I was surprised Udyr was out and didn't think that there was a patch available, but that shouldn't be the case going forward, you guys. So anyways, once again, thank you all so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.